Portobello by Paulo Coelho. Ooh, I have to show you a gift I just got. Hold on, guys. So one of my good friends saw I was reading it and hooked it up with all of Paulo Coelho's books, which is amazing. This was like one of the coolest gifts I think I've ever received. Sorry to other people who've given me gifts, but that one, that tops the cake, okay? It was very rad. Like, I love Paulo Coelho. And now we've got more reading material, guys. Although my next book is going to be The Four Agreements, because I did order this first. And a lot of people need to hear that one. So, yeah. Anyway, without further ado, let's get started. Deidre O'Neill, known as Etta. Athena stayed in a hotel near my house. News from London regarding local events, especially minor conflicts in the suburbs, never reaches Scotland. We're not much interested in how the English sort out their little problems. We have our own flag, our own football team, and soon we will have our own parliament. I let Athena rest for a whole day. The following morning, instead of going into the little temple and performing the rituals I know, I decided to take her and her son to a wood near Edinburgh. There, while the boy played and ran about among the trees, she told me in detail what was going on. When she'd finished, I said, "It's daylight, the sky's cloudy, and human beings believe that beyond the clouds lives an all-powerful God, guiding the fate of men. Meanwhile, look at your son, look at your feet, listen to the sounds around you. Down here is the mother, so much closer, bringing joy to children and energy to those who walk over her body. Why do people prefer to believe in something far away and forget what is there before their eyes, a true manifestation of the miracle? I know the answer, because up there someone is guiding us and giving his orders, hidden behind the clouds, unquestionable in his wisdom. Down here we have physical contact with a magical reality, and the freedom to choose where our steps will go." Exactly, but do you think that is what people want? Do they want the freedom to choose their own steps? Yes, I think they do. The earth I'm standing on now has laid out many strange paths for me, from a village in Transylvania to a city in the Middle East, from there to another city on an island, and then to the desert and back to Transylvania, from a suburban bank to a real estate company in the Persian Gulf, from a dance group to a Bedouin, and whenever my feet drove me onward, I said yes instead of saying no. What did you gain from all that? Today I can see people's auras. I can awaken the mother in my soul. My life now has meaning, and I know what I'm fighting for, but why do you ask? You too gain the most important power of all, the gift of healing. Andrea can now prophesy and converse with spirits. I followed her spiritual development every step of the way. What else have you gained? The joy of being alive. I know that I'm here and that everything is a miracle, a revelation. The boy fell over and grazed his knee. Instinctively, Athena ran to him, wiped the wound clean, told him not to worry, and the boy continued running about in the forest. I used that as a signal. What just happened to your little boy? What just happened to your little boy happened to me. And it's happening to you, isn't it? Yes, but I don't think I stumbled and fell. I think I'm being tested again, and that my next steps will be revealed to me. At such moments, a teacher must say nothing, only bless the disciple. Because however much the teacher may want to save her disciple from suffering, the paths are mapped out, and the disciple's feet are eager to follow them. I suggested we go back to the wood that night, just the two of us. She asked where she could leave her son, and I said that I would take care of that. I had a neighbor who owed me a favor and who would be delighted to look after Vioro. As evening fell, we returned to that same place, and on the way we spoke of things that had nothing to do with the ritual we were about to perform. Athena had seen me using a new kind of depilatory wax, and was intrigued to know what advantages it had over the old methods. We talked animatedly about vanity, fashion, and the cheapest places to buy clothes, female behavior, feminism, hairstyles. At one point, she said something along the lines of, "But if the soul is ageless, I don't know why we should be so worried about all this." Then realized that it was alright just to relax and talk about superficial subjects. More than that, such conversations were really fun, and how we look is something that's still very important in women's lives. It is in men's lives too, but in a different way. They're not as open about it as we are. As we approached the place I'd chosen, or rather, the wood was choosing for me, I started to feel the presence of the mother. In my case, this presence manifests itself in a certain mysterious inner joy that always touches me and almost moves me to tears. It was the moment to stop and change the subject. "Collect some wood for kindling," I said, "but it's dark. There's enough light from the full moon, even if it's obscured by clouds. Train your eyes. They were made to see more than you think." She began doing as I asked, occasionally cursing because she'd scratched herself on a thorn. Almost half an hour passed, and during that time we didn't talk. I felt the excitement of knowing that the mother was close by, the euphoria of being there with that woman who still seemed little more than a child, and who trusted me and was keeping me company in the search of that sometimes seemed too mad for the human mind. Athena was still at the stage of answering questions, just as she'd responded to mine that afternoon. I had been like that once, until I allowed myself to be transported completely into the kingdom of mystery, where it was simply a matter of contemplating, celebrating, worshiping, praising, and allowing the gift to manifest itself. I was watching Athena collecting firewood, and I saw the girl I once was, in search of the veiled secrets and the secret powers. Life had taught me something completely different. The powers were not secret, and the secrets had been revealed a long time ago. When I saw that she had gathered enough firewood, I indicated that she should stop. I myself looked for some larger branches and put them on top of the kindling. So it was in life. In order for the substantial pieces of wood to catch fire, the kindling must burn first. In order for us to liberate the energy of our strength, our weakness must first have the chance to reveal itself. In order for us to understand the powers we carry within us and the secrets that have already been revealed, it was first necessary to allow the surface expectations, fears, appearances to be burned away. We were entering the peace now settling upon the forest. With the gentle wind, the moonlight behind the clouds, the noises of the animals and that sally forth at night to hunt, thus fulfilling the cycle of birth and death of the mother, and without ever being criticized for following their instincts and their nature. I lit the fire. Neither of us felt like saying anything for what seemed like an eternity. We merely contemplated the dance of the fire, knowing that hundreds of thousands of people all over the world would also be sitting by their fireside, regardless of whether they had modern heating systems in their house or not. They did this because they were sitting for a symbol. It took a great effort to emerge from that trance, which, although it meant nothing specific to me, it did not make me see gods, auras, or ghosts, nonetheless left me in a state of grace I needed to be in. I focused once more on the present, on the young woman by my side, on the ritual I needed to perform. "How is your student?" I asked. "Difficult, but if she wasn't, I might not learn what I needed to learn." "And what powers is she developing?" "She speaks with beings in the parallel world." "As you converse with Hagia Sophia?" "No, as well you know, Hagia Sophia is the mother manifesting herself in me. She speaks with invisible beings." I knew this, but I wanted to be sure. Athena was more silent than usual. I don't know if she had discussed the events in London with Andrea, but that didn't matter. I got up, opened the bag I had with me, took out a handful of specially chosen herbs and threw them into the flames. "The wood has started to speak," said Athena, as if this were something perfectly normal, and that was good. It meant that miracles were now becoming a part of her life. What is it saying? Nothing at the moment, only noises. Minutes later, she heard a song coming from the fire. Oh, it's wonderful. There spoke the little girl, not the wife or mother. Stay just as you are. Don't try to concentrate or follow my steps or understand what I'm saying. Relax and feel good. That is sometimes all we can hope for from life. I knelt down, picked up a red-hot piece of wood, and drew a circle around her, leaving a small opening through which I could enter. I could hear the same music as Athena, and I danced around her, invoking the union of the male fire with the earth, which received it now with arms and legs spread wide. The fire that purified everything, transforming into energy the strength contained in the firewood, and those branches, and those beings, both human and invisible. I danced for as long as the melody from the fire lasted, and I made protective gestures to the child who was sitting, smiling, inside the circle. When the flames had burned down, I took a little ash and sprinkled it on Athena's head. Then with my feet, I erased the circle I had drawn around her. Thank you, she said. I felt very loved, wanted, and protected. In difficult moments, remember that feeling. Now that I've found my path, there will be no more difficult moments after all. I have a mission to fulfill, don't I? Yes, we all have a mission to fulfill. She started to feel uncertain. And what about the difficult moments, she asked. That isn't an intelligent thing to ask. Remember what you just said. You are loved, wanted, and protected. I'll do my best. Her eyes filled with tears. Athena understood my answer. Samira R. Khalil, housewife. My own grandson. What has my grandson got to do with all this? What kind of world are we living in? Are we still in the Middle Ages, engaging in witch hunts? I ran to him. He had a bloody nose, but he didn't seem to care about my distress and pushed me away. I don't know how to defend myself, and I did. Or I know how to defend myself, and I did. I may never have produced a child in my own womb, but I know the hearts of children. I was far more worried about Athena than I was about Viorel. This was just one of many fights he would have to face in his life. And there was a flicker of pride in his swollen eyes. Some children at school said that Mum was a devil worshiper. Shireen arrived shortly after, soon enough to see the boy's bloodied face and to kick up a fuss. She wanted to go straight to the school and talk to the head teacher, but first I put my arms around her and I let her cry out all her tears and all her frustrations, and the best thing I could do then was to keep silent and try to convey my love for her through that silence. When she had calmed down, I explained carefully that she could come back home and live with us, that we would take care of everything. When her father read about the case being brought against her, he had immediately spoken to some lawyers. We would do everything we could to get her out of this situation, regardless of the comments from the neighbors, ironic looks from acquaintances, and the false solidarity of friends. Nothing in the world was more important than my daughter's happiness, even though I'd never understood why she always had to choose the most difficult and painful of paths. But a mother doesn't have to understand anything. She simply has to love and protect and feel proud. Knowing that we could give her almost everything, she nevertheless set off early in search of her independence. She'd had her stumbles and her failures, but she insisted on facing any storms alone. She went looking for her mother, aware of the risk she was running, and in the end that encounter brought her closer to us. I knew she had never once heeded my advice. Get a degree, get married, put up with the problems of living with someone without complaint. Don't try to go beyond the limits set by society, and what had been the result? By following my daughter's story, I became a better person. Obviously, I didn't understand about the mother goddess or Athena's need to always surround herself with strangers, or her inability to be content with all that she'd achieved after so much work. But deep down, even though it may be rather late in the day for such ideas, I wish I could have been like her. I was about to get up and prepare something to eat, but she stopped me. I want to stay here for a while with your arms around me. That's all I need. We will go and watch TV. I want to talk with your grandmother." The boy obeyed. "I must have caused you a lot of suffering." "Not at all. On the contrary, you and your son are the source of all our joy and our reason for living. But I haven't exactly. I'm glad it's been the way it has. I can say it now. There were moments when I hated you, when I bitterly regretted not having followed the advice of that nurse and adopted another baby. Then I'd ask myself, how can a mother hate her own daughter? I took tranquilizers, played bridge with my friends, went on shopping sprees, and all to make up for the love I'd given you, and which I felt I wasn't getting back. A few months ago, when you decided to give up yet another job that was bringing you both money and prestige, I was in despair. I went to the local church and I wanted to make a promise to the Virgin and beg her to bring you back to reality, to force you to change your life and make the most of the chances you were throwing away. I was ready to do anything in exchange for that. I stood looking at the Virgin and the child and I said, 'You're a mother and you know what's happening. Ask anything of me, but save my child, because I think she's bent on self-destruction.'" Sounds like my own mom. Sorry, man. I felt Shireen's arms holding me tighter, and she was crying again, but her tears were different this time. I was doing my best to control my feelings. And do you know what I felt at that moment? I felt that she was talking to me and saying, "Listen, Samira." That's what I thought too. I suffered for years because my son wouldn't listen to anything I said. I used to worry about his safety. I didn't like the friends he chose, and he showed no respect for laws, customs, religion, or his elders. Need I go on? Yes, I'd like to hear the rest of the story. The Virgin concluded by saying, "But my son didn't listen to me, and now I'm very glad that he didn't." I gently removed myself from her embrace and got up. "You two need to eat." I went to the kitchen, prepared some onion soup and a dish of tabbouleh. Sorry. Warmed up some unleavened bread. Oh, like Jesus ate. Very nice. Put it all on the table and we had lunch together. We talked about trivial things, which at such moments always help to bring us together, and to justify our pleasure at being there. Quietly, even if outside a storm is uprooting trees and sowing destruction. Of course, at the end of that afternoon, my daughter and my grandson would walk out of the door to confront the winds, the thunder, and the lightning all over again. But that was their choice. "Mom, you said you'd do anything for me, didn't you?" It was true. I would lay down my life if necessary. Don't you think I should be prepared to do anything for Vioral, too? I think that's a mother's instinct, but instinct aside, it's the greatest proof of love there is. She continued eating. "You know that your father is happy to help with this case being brought against you. If you want him to, that is." "Of course I do. This is my family we're talking about." I thought twice, 3 times, but couldn't hold back my words. "Can I give you some advice? I know you have some influential friends, that journalist, for example. Why don't you ask him to write about your story and tell him your version of events? The press are giving a lot of coverage to that vicar, and people will end up thinking he's right. So as well as accepting what I do, you also want to help me." "Yes, Shireen. Even though I may not understand you, even though I sometimes suffer as the Virgin must have suffered all her life, even if you're not Jesus Christ with an all-important message for the world, I'm on your side, and I want to see you win." That's where she's wrong. Jesus Christ can embody a woman, too. Just saying. Heron Ryan, journalist. Athena arrived here while I was frantically making notes for what I imagined to be the ideal interview on the events in Portobello and the rebirth of the goddess. It was a very, very delicate affair. What I saw at the warehouse was a woman saying, "You can do it. Let the Great Mother teach you. Trust and love, and miracles will happen." And the crowd agreed, but that wouldn't last long, because we were living in an age in which slavery was the only path to happiness. Free will demands immense responsibility. It's hard work. It brings with it anguish and suffering. I need you to write something about me, she said. I told her that we should wait a little. After all, the whole affair could fade from view the following week. But that meanwhile, I'd prepared a few questions about female energy. At the moment, all the fuss and the fighting is only of interest to people in the immediate area and to the tabloids. No respectable newspaper has published a single line about it. London is full of these little local disturbances, and getting into the broadsheets really isn't advisable. It would be best if the group didn't meet for 2 or 3 weeks. However, I think that the business about the goddess, if treated with the seriousness it deserves, could make a lot of people ask themselves some really important questions. Over supper that time, you said you loved me, and now you're not only telling me you don't want to help me, but you're also asking me to give up the things I believe in. How to interpret those words? Was she finally accepting the love I'd offered her that night, and which accompanied me every minute of my life? According to the Lebanese poet Coelho Gibran? I've only ever read his name, okay? I've never heard it. Gibran. Great poet. It was more important to give than to receive. But all these were wise words. I was part of what is known as humanity, with my frailties, my moments of indecision, my desire simply to live in peace, to be a slave of my feelings, and to surrender myself without asking any questions, without even knowing if my love was reciprocated. All she had to do was to let me love her. I was sure that Hagia Sophia would agree with me. Athena had been passing through my life now for nearly 2 years, and I was afraid she might simply continue on her way and disappear over the horizon, without my having even been able to accompany her on part of that journey. Are you talking about love? I'm asking for your help. What to do? Control myself, stay cool, not precipitate things, and end up destroying them, or take the steps I needed to take, embrace her and protect her from all dangers? My head kept telling me to say, don't you worry about a thing, I love you. But instead I said, I want to help, please trust me. I'd do anything in the world for you, including saying no if I thought that it was the right thing to do, even though you might not understand my reasoning. I told her that the deputy editor on my newspaper had proposed a series of articles about the reawakening of the goddess, which would include an interview with her. At first it had seemed to me an excellent idea, but now I saw that it would be best to wait a little. I said, you either carry your mission forward or you defend yourself. You're aware, I know, that what you're doing is more important than how you're seen by others. Do you agree? I'm thinking of my son. Every day now he gets into some fight or argument at school. That will pass in a week, it will be forgotten. That will be the moment to act, not in order to defend yourself against idiotic attacks, but to set out confidently and wisely in the true breadth of your work. And if you have any doubts about my feelings and are determined to continue, then I'll come with you to the next meeting and we'll see what happens. The following Monday, I went with her to the meeting. I was not now just another person in the crowd. I could see things as she was seeing them. People crowded into the warehouse. There were flowers and applause, young women calling her the priestess of the goddess. A few smartly dressed ladies begging her for a private audience because of some illness in the family. The crowd started pushing us and blocking the entrance. We had never imagined that we might need some form of security, and I was frightened. I took her arm, picked up Bioral, and we went in. Inside the packed room, a very angry Andrea was waiting for us. I think you should tell them that you're not performing any miracles today, she shouted at Athena. You're allowing yourself to be seduced by vanity. Why doesn't Hagia Sophia tell all these people to go away? Because she can diagnose illnesses, replied Athena defiantly, and the more people who benefit from that, the better. She was about to say more, but the crowd was applauding, and she stepped up onto the improvised stage. She turned on the small sound system she'd brought from home, gave instructions for people to dance against the rhythm of the music, and the ritual began. At a certain point, Vioral went and sat down in a corner. That was the moment for Hagia Sophia to appear. Athena did as I'd seen her do many times before. She abruptly turned off the music, clutched her head in her hands, and the people waited in silence, as if obeying an invisible an invisible command. The ritual followed its unvarying path. There were questions about love, which were rejected, although she agreed to comment on anxieties, illnesses, and other personal problems. From where I was, I could see that some people had tears in their eyes, and others behaved as if they were standing before a saint. Then came the moment for the closing sermon before the group celebration of the mother. Since I knew what would happen next, I started thinking about the best way to get out of there with a minimum of fuss. I hoped that she would take Andrea's advice and tell them not to go looking for miracles there. I went over to where Vioral was sitting so that we could leave the place as soon as his mother had finished speaking. And that was when I heard the voice of Hagia Sophia. Today, before we close, we're going to talk about diet. Forget all about slimming regimes. Diet, forget about slimming regimes. We have survived for all these millennia because we have been able to eat. And now that seems to have become a curse. Why? What is it that makes us, at 40 years old, want to have the same body we had when we were young? Is it possible to stop time? Of course not. And why should we be thin? I heard a kind of murmuring in the crowd. They were probably expecting a more spiritual message. We don't need to be thin. We buy books, we go to gyms, we expend a lot of brain power on trying to hold back time, when we should be celebrating the miracle of being here in this world. Instead of thinking about how to live better, we're obsessed with weight. Forget all about that. You can read all the books you want, do all the exercise you want, punish yourself as much as you want, but you will still have only two choices: either stop living or get fat. Eat in moderation, but take pleasure in eating. It isn't what enters a person's mouth that's evil, but what leaves it. Remember that for a millennia we have struggled in order to keep from starving. Whose idea was it that we had to be thin all our lives? I'll tell you, the vampires of the soul. Those who are so afraid of the future that they think it's possible to stop the wheel of time. Hagia Sophia can guarantee that it's not possible. Use the energy and effort you put into dieting to nourish yourself with spiritual bread. Know that the Great Mother gives generously and wisely. Respect that, and you will get no fatter than passing time demands. Instead of artificially burning those calories, try to transform them into the energy required to fight for your dreams. No one ever stayed slim for very long just because of a diet. There was a complete silence. Athena began the closing ceremony, and we all celebrated the presence of the mother. I clasped Vioral in my arms, promising myself that the next time I would bring a few friends along to provide a little improvised security. We left the same shouts and applause as when we had arrived. The shopkeeper grabbed my arm. "This is absurd. If one of my windows gets smashed, I'll sue you." Athena was laughing and giving autographs. Vioral seemed happy. I just hoped that no journalist was there that night. When we finally managed to extricate ourselves from the crowd, we hailed a taxi. I asked if they would like to go somewhere to eat. "Of course," said Athena. "That's just what I've been talking about." Antoine Lucador, historian. In this long series of mistakes that came to be known as the Witch of Portobello affair, what surprises me most is the ingenuineness of Heron Ryan, an international journalist of many years' experience. When we spoke, he was horrified by the tabloid headlines. "The goddess diet," screamed one. Get thin while you eat, says the witch of Portobello, roared another from its front page. See, that's how Jesus got misconstrued too. People be taking what they say and just fucking it all up. Don't do that to me, guys. That's why I put a camera in front of my face, so you guys can see exactly what I'm saying. Let's be real. As well as touching on the sensitive topic of religion. Athena had gone further. She had talked about diet, a subject of national interest, more important than wars, strikes, or natural disasters. We may not all believe in God, but we all want to get thin. Reporters interviewed local shopkeepers who all swore blind that in the days preceding the mass meeting, they'd seen red and black candles being lit during rituals involving only a handful of people. It may have been nothing but cheap sensationalism, but Ryan should have foreseen that with a court case in progress, the accuser would take every opportunity to bring to the judge's attention what he considered to be not only a calumny, but also an attack on all the values that kept society going. That same week, one of the most prestigious British newspapers published in its editorial column an article by the Reverend Ian Buck, minister at the Evangelical Church in Kensington. It said, among other things, "As a good Christian, I have a duty to turn the other cheek when I am wrongly attacked or when my honor is impugned." But he would attack another. However, we must not forget that while Jesus may have turned the other cheek, he also used a whip to drive out those wanting to make the Lord's house into a den of thieves. Don't churches have gift shops and coffee shops in them these days? Literally the thing that Jesus was turning tables and whipping people about? God, just saying. That is what we are seeing at the moment in Portobello Road. Unscrupulous people who pass themselves off as savers of souls, giving false hope and promising cures for all ills, even declaring that you can stay thin and elegant if you follow their teachings. That's not what she said. For this reason, I have no alternative but to go to the courts to prevent this situation continuing. The movement's followers swear that they are capable of awakening hitherto unknown gifts that they deny the existence of an all-powerful God, replacing him with a pagan divinities such as Venus and Aphrodite. For them, everything is permitted as long as it is done with love. But what is love? An immoral force that justifies any end or commitment to society's true values, such as the family and tradition. I've seen more hatred in family structures than I have in most other structures, just saying. When you do anything in love, it is not a sin. Let's be real. I've seen more hate in the church. At the next meeting, foreseeing a repetition of the pitched battle of August, the police brought in a half-dozen officers to avoid any confrontations. Athena arrived accompanied by a bodyguard improvised by Ryan. And this time there was not only applause, but also booing and cursing too. One woman, seeing that Athena was accompanied by a child, brought a charge 2 days later under the Children Act 1989, alleging that the mother was inflicting irreversible damage on her child and that custody should be given to the father. One of the tabloids managed to track down Lucas Jessen Peterson, who refused to give an interview. He threatened the reporter, saying that if he so much as mentioned Bjorl in his articles, he wouldn't be responsible for his actions. The following day, the tabloid carried the headline, "Witch of Portobello's ex would kill for son." The same afternoon, 2 more charges under the Children Act of 1989 were brought to the courts, calling for the child to be taken into care. There was no meeting after that. Groups of people, for and against, gathered outside the door, and uniformed officers were on hand to keep the peace. but Athena did not appear. The same thing happened the following week, only this time there were fewer crowds and fewer police. The third week, there was only the occasional bunch of flowers to be seen, and someone handing out photos of Athena to passerbys. The subject disappeared from the front pages of the London dailies, and when the Reverend Ian Buck announced his decision to withdraw all charges of defamation and calumny in the Christian spirit, that we should show to those who repent of their actions. No major paper was interested in publishing a statement, which turned up instead on the readers' pages of some local rag. As far as I know, it never became national news, but it was restricted to the papers that dealt only with London news. I visited Brighton a month after the meetings ended, and when I tried to bring the subject up with my friends there, none of them had the faintest idea what I was talking about. Ryan could have cleared up the whole business, and what his newspaper said would have been picked up by the rest of the media. To my surprise, though, he never published a line about Shireen Khalil. In my view, the crime, given its nature, had nothing to do with what happened in Portobello. It was all just a macabre coincidence. Alright, I'm going to take a break there, and I will be right back. Alright, I'm back. Hero and Ryan, journalist. Athena asked me to turn on the tape recorder. She had brought another one with her, of a type I'd never seen before, very sophisticated and very small. First, I wish to state that I've been receiving death threats. Second, I want you to promise that even if I die, you will wait 5 years before you allow anyone else to listen to this tape. In the future, people will be able to tell what is true and what is false. Say you agree that you will be entering a legally binding agreement. I agree, but don't think anything. Should I be found dead, this will be my testament, on condition that it won't be published now. I turned off the tape recorder. You have nothing to fear. I have friends in government, people who owe me favors, who need or will need me. Have I mentioned before that my boyfriend works for Scotland Yard? Not that again. If he really did exist, why wasn't he there when we needed him? When both Athena and Bjorl would have been attacked by the mob. Questions crowded into my mind. Was she trying to test me? What was going through that woman's mind? Was she unbalanced, fickle, 1 hour wanting to be by my side, the next talking about this non-existent man? Turn on the tape recorder. I felt terrible. I was beginning to think that she'd been using me all along. I would like to have been able to say, go away, get out of my life. Ever since I first met you, everything has been a hell. All I want is for you to come here and put your arms around me and kiss me and say that you want to stay with me forever, but that never happens. Is there anything wrong? She knew there was something wrong. Or rather, she couldn't possibly have known what I was feeling because I had never concealed my love for her, even though I'd only spoken openly of it once, but I would cancel any appointment to see her. I was always there when she needed me. I was trying to build some kind of relationship with her son in the belief that he would one day call me Dad. I never asked her to stop what she was doing. I accepted her way of life, her decisions. I suffered in silence when she suffered. I was glad when she triumphed. I was proud of her determination. Why did you turn off the tape recorder? I hovered for a second between heaven and hell, between rebellion and submission, between cold reason and destructive emotions. In the end, summoning up all my strength, I managed to control myself. I pressed the button. Let's continue. As I was saying, I've been receiving death threats. I've been getting anonymous phone calls. They insult me and say that I'm a menace. I'm trying to restore the reign of Satan, and that they can't allow this to happen. Have you spoken to the police? I deliberately omitted any reference to her boyfriend, showing that I'd never believed that story anyway. Yes, I have. They've recorded the calls. They come from public payphones, but the police told me not to worry, that they're watching the house. They've arrested one person. He's mentally ill and believes he's the reincarnation of one of the apostles, and that this time he must fight so that Christ is not driven out again. They're driving out Christ. He's in a psychiatric hospital now. The police explain that he's been in the hospital before for making similar threats to other people. If they're on the case, there's no need to worry. Our police are the best in the world. I'm not afraid of death. If I were to die today, I would carry with me the moments that few people my age have had the chance to experience. What I am afraid of, and this is why I've asked you to record our conversation today, is that I might kill someone. Kill someone. You know that there are legal proceedings underway to remove the oral from me. I've asked friends, but no one can do anything. We just have to await the verdict. According to them, depending on the judge, of course, these fanatics will get what they want. That's why I bought a gun. I know what it means for a child to be removed from his mother because I've experienced it myself, and so when the first bailiff arrives, I'll shoot. And I'll keep shooting until the bullets run out. If they don't shoot me first, I'll use the knives in my house. If they take the knives, I'll use my teeth and my nails. But no one is going to take the oral from me, or only over my dead body. Are you recording this? I am, but there are ways there aren't. My father is following the case. He says that when it comes to family law, there's little that can be done. Now turn off the tape recorder. Was that your testament? She didn't answer. When I did nothing, she took the initiative. She went over to the sound system and put on that music from the steps, which I now knew almost by heart. She danced, and as she did during the rituals, completely out of rhythm, and I knew what she was trying to do. Her tape recorder was still on, a silent witness to everything that was happening there. The afternoon sunlight was pouring in through the windows, but Athena was off in search of another light, one that had been there since the creation of the world. When she felt the spark from the mother, she stopped dancing, turned off the music, and put her head in her hands, and didn't move for some time. Then she raised her head and looked at me. You know who is here, don't you? Yes, Athena and her divine side, Hagia Sophia. I've grown used to doing this. I don't think it's necessary, but it's the method I've discovered for getting in touch with her. And now it's become a tradition in my life. You know who you're talking to, don't you? To Athena. I am Hagia Sophia. Yes, I know. The second time I danced at your house, I discovered that I had a spirit guide too, Philemon. But I don't talk to him very much. I don't listen to what he says. I only know that when he's present, it's as if our two souls have finally met. That's right. And today Philemon and Hagia Sophia are going to talk about love. Should I dance first? There's no need. Philemon will understand me because I can see that you were touched by my dance. Oh, one sec. The man before me suffers for something which he believes he has never received, my love. But the man beyond yourself understands that all the pain, anxiety, and feelings of abandonment are unnecessary and childish. I love you. Not in the way that your human side wants, but in the way that the divine spark wants. We inhabit the same tent, which was placed on our path by her. There we understand that we are not the slaves of our feelings, but their masters. We serve and are served. We open the doors of our rooms and we embrace. Perhaps we kiss too, because everything that happens very intensely on earth will have its counterpart on the invisible plane. And you know that I'm not trying to provoke you, and I'm not toying with your feelings when I say that. What is love then? The soul, blood, and body of the Great Mother. I love you as exiled souls love each other when they meet in the middle of the desert. There will never be anything physical between us, but no passion is in vain. No love is ever wasted. If the Mother awoke that love in your heart, she awoke it in mine too. Although your heart perhaps accepts it more readily, the energy of love can never be lost. It is more powerful than anything and shows itself in many ways. I'm not strong enough for this, Such abstractions only leave me feeling more depressed and alone than ever. I'm not strong enough either. I need someone by my side too, but one day our eyes will open and the different forms of love will be made manifest, and then suffering will disappear from the face of the earth. It won't be long now, I think. Many of us are returning from a long journey, during which we were forced to search for things that were of no interest to us. Now we realize that they were false, but this return cannot be made without pain, because we have been away for a long time and feel that we are strangers in our own land. It will take some time to find the friends who also left, and the places where our roots and our treasures lie. But this will happen. For some reason, what she said touched me, and that drove me on. I want to continue talking about love, I said. We are talking. It has always been the aim of everything I've looked for in my life, allowing love to manifest itself inside me without barriers, letting it fill up my blank spaces, making me dance, smile, justify my life, protect my son, and get in touch with the heavens, with men and women, with all those who were placed on my path. I tried to control my feelings, saying such things as, he deserves my love, or he doesn't, until, that is, I understood my fate, when I saw that I might lose the most important thing in my life, your son. Exactly. He is the most complete manifestation of love, and the possibility arose that he might be taken away from me. And I found myself, and I realized that I could never have anything or lose anything. I understood this after crying for many hours. It was only after intense suffering that the part of me I call Hagia Sophia said, what nonsense, love always stays, even though sooner or later your son will leave. I was beginning to understand love is not a habit, a commitment, or a debt. It isn't what romantic songs tell us it is. Love simply is. That is a testament of Athena, or Shireen, or Hagia Sophia. Love is. No definitions. Love, and don't ask too many questions. Just love. That's difficult. Are you recording? You asked me to turn the machine off. I'll turn it on again. I did as she asked. Athena went on, it's too difficult for me to. And that's why I'm not going back home. I'm going into hiding. The police might protect me from madmen, but not from human justice. I had a mission to fulfill, and it took me so far that I even risked the custody of my son. Not that I regret it, I fulfilled my destiny. What was your mission? You know what it was. You were there from the start, preparing the way for the mother, continuing a tradition that has been suppressed for centuries, but which is now beginning to experience a resurgence. Perhaps. I stopped, but she didn't say a word until I'd finished my sentence. Perhaps you came too early and the people aren't ready yet. Athena laughed. Of course they're not. That's why there were all those confrontations, all that aggression and obscurantism, because the forces of darkness are dying, and they are thrown back on such things as a last resort. They seem very strong, as animals do before they die, but afterward they're too exhausted to get to their feet. I sowed the seed in many hearts, and each one will reveal the Renaissance in its own way. But one of those hearts will follow the full tradition. Andrea, who hated her, blamed her for the collapse of our relationship, who said to anyone who would listen that Athena had been taken over by egotism and vanity, and had destroyed something that had been very hard to create. Athena got to her feet and picked up her bag. Hagia Sophia was still with her. I can see her aura. It's being healed of some needless suffering. You know, of course, that Andrea doesn't like you, naturally. But we've been speaking for nearly half an hour about love. A liking has nothing to do with it. Andrea is perfectly capable of fulfilling her mission. She has more experience and more charisma than I do. She learned from my mistakes. She knows that she must be prudent, because in an age in which the wild beast of obscurantism is dying, there's bound to be conflict. Andrea may hate me as a person, and that may be why she's developed her gifts so quickly, to prove that she was more able than me. When hatred makes a person grow, it's transformed into one of the many ways of loving. She picked up her tape recorder, put it in her bag, and left. At the end of that week, the court gave its verdict. Various witnesses heard, and Shireen Khalil, known as Athena, was given the right to keep custody of her child. Moreover, the head teacher at the boys' school was officially warned that any kind of discrimination against the boy would be punishable by law. I knew there was no point in ringing the apartment where she used to live. She'd left the key with Andrea, taken her sound system, some clothes, and said that she would be gone for some time. I waited for the telephone call to invite me to celebrate the victory together. With each day that passed, my love for Athena increased. My love for Athena ceased being a source of suffering and became a lake of joy and serenity. I no longer felt so alone, and at some point in space, our souls and the souls of all those returning exiles were joyfully celebrating their reunion. The first week I passed, and I assumed she was trying to recover from the recent tensions. A month later, I assumed she must have gone back to Dubai and taken up her old job. I telephoned and was told that they'd heard nothing more from her. But if I knew where she was, could I please give her a message? The door was always open, and she was greatly missed. I decided to write a series of articles on the reawakening of the mother, which provoked a number of offensive letters accusing me of promoting paganism, but which were otherwise a great success with our readership. 2 months later, when I was just about to have lunch, a colleague at work phoned me. The body of Shireen Khalil, the witch of Portobello, had been found in Hampstead. She had been brutally murdered. Now that I've finished transcribing all the taped interviews, I'm going to give her the transcript. She's probably gone for a walk in this Nodonia National Park, as she does every afternoon. It's her birthday, or rather the date that her parents chose for her birthday when they adopted her, and this is my present to her. Bioral, who will be coming to the celebration with his grandparents, has also prepared a surprise for her. He's recorded his first composition in a friend's studio, and he's going to play it during supper. And she'll ask me afterward, "Why did you do this?" And I'll say, "Because I needed to understand you. During all the years we've been together, I've only heard what I thought were legends about her, but now I know that the legends are true. Whenever I suggested going with her, be it to the Monday evening celebrations at her apartment, to Romania, or to get-togethers with friends, she always asked me not to. She wanted to be free, and people, she said, find policemen intimidating. Faced by someone like me, even the innocent feel guilty. However, I went to the Portobello warehouse twice without her knowledge, again without her knowledge, and I arranged for various colleagues to be around to protect her when she arrived and left, and at least one person, later identified as a militant member of some sect, was arrested for carrying a knife. He said he'd been told by spirits to acquire a little blood from the witch of Portobello, who was a manifestation of the Great Mother. The blood, he said, was needed to consecrate certain offerings. He didn't intend to kill her, he merely wanted a little blood on a handkerchief. The investigation shows that there really was no intention to murder, but nevertheless he was charged and sentenced to 6 months in prison. It wasn't my idea to make it look as if she'd been murdered. Athena wanted to disappear and asked me if that would be possible. I explained that if the courts decided that the state should have custody of her child, I couldn't go against the law, but when the judge found in her favor, we were free to carry out her plan. Athena was fully aware that once the meetings at the warehouse became the focus of local gossip, her mission would be ruined for good. There was no point standing up in front of the crowd and denying that she was a queen, a witch, a divine manifestation, because people choose to follow the powerful and they give power to whomever they wish, and that would go against everything she preached. Freedom to choose, to consecrate your own bread, to awaken your particular gifts with no help from guides or shepherds. Nor was there any point in disappearing. People would interrupt such a gesture as a retreat into the wilderness, an ascent into the heavens, a secret pilgrimage to meet teachers in the Himalayas. They would always be awaiting her return. Legends and possibly a cult would grow up around her. We started to notice this when she stopped going to Portobello. My informant said that, contrary to everyone's expectations, her cult was growing with frightening speed. Other similar groups were being created, and people were turning up claiming to be heirs of Hagia Sophia. The newspaper photograph of her holding Buell was being sold on the black market, depicting her as a victim, a martyr to intolerance. Occultists started talking about an order of Athena, through which, upon payment, one could be put in touch with the founder. All that remained was death, but the death had to take place in completely normal circumstances, like the death of any other person murdered in a big city. This obliged us to take certain precautions. The crime could not in any way be associated with martyrdom for religious reasons, because if it was, we would only aggravate the very situation we were trying to avoid. The victim would have to be so badly disfigured as to be recognizable. The murderer could not be arrested. We would need a corpse. In a city like London, dead, disfigured, burned bodies turn up every day, but normally we find the culprit, so we had to wait nearly 2 months until the Hampstead murder. We found a murderer too, who was also conveniently dead. He had fled to Portugal and committed suicide by blowing out his brains. Justice had been done, and all I needed was a little cooperation from my closest friends. One hand washes the other. They sometimes asked me to do things that were not entirely orthodox, and as long as no major law was broken, there was, shall we say, a certain degree of flexibility in interpreting the facts. That is what happened. As soon as the body was found, I and a colleague of many years were given the case, and almost simultaneously we got news that the Portuguese police had found the body of a suicide in Guimarães, along with a note confessing to a murder whose details fitted the case we were dealing with, and giving instructions for all his money to be donated to charitable institutions. It had been a crime of passion. Love often ends like that. In the note he left behind, the dead man said that he'd brought the woman from one of the ex-Soviet republics and done everything he could to help her. He was prepared to marry her so that she would have the same rights as a British citizen. And then he'd found a letter she was about to send to some German man who had invited her to spend a few days at his castle. In the letter, she said she couldn't wait to leave and asked the German to send her a plane ticket at once so that they could meet again as soon as possible. They had met in a London cafe and had only exchanged 2 letters. We had the perfect scenario. My friend hesitated. No one likes to have an unsolved crime on their files, but when I said that I'd take the blame for this, he agreed. I went to the place where Athena was in hiding, a delightful house in Oxford. I used a syringe to take some of her blood. I cut off a lock of her hair and singed it slightly. Back at the scene of the crime, I scattered this evidence. I knew that since no one knew the identity of her real mother and father, no DNA identification would be possible, and so all I needed was to cross my fingers and hope the murderer didn't get too much coverage in the press. A few journalists turned up. I told them the story of the murder-suicide, mentioning only the country, not the town. I said that no motive had been found for the crime, but that we completely discounted any idea that it was a revenge killing or that there had been some religious motive. As I understood it, after all, the police can make mistakes too. The victim had been raped. She had presumably recognized her attacker, who had then killed and mutilated her. If the German ever wrote again, his letters would have been sent back, marked return to sender. Athena's photograph had appeared only once in the newspaper, during the first demonstration in Portobello, and so the chances of her being recognized were minimal. Apart from me, only 3 people know this story, her parents and her son. They all attended the burial of her remains, and the gravestone bears her name. Her son goes to see her every weekend and is doing brilliantly at school. Of course, Athena may one day tire of this isolated life and decide to return to London. Nevertheless, people have very short memories, and apart from her closest friends, no one will remember her. By then, Andrea will be the catalyst, and to be fair, she is better able than Athena to continue the mission, as well as having all the necessary gifts. She's an actress and knows how to deal with the public. I understand that Andrea's work is spreading, although without attracting unwanted attention. I hear about people in key positions in society who are in contact with her, and when necessary, when the right critical mass is reached, they will put an end to the hypocrisy of the Reverend Ian Bucks of this world. And that's what Athena wants, not fame for herself, as many, including Andrea, thought, but that the mission should be completed. At the start of my investigations, of which this transcript is the result, I thought I was reconstructing her life so that she could see how brave and important she had been. But as the conversations went on, I gradually discovered my own hidden side, even though I don't much believe in these things. And I reached the conclusion that the real reason behind all this work was a desire to answer a question which I had never known the answer. Why did Athena love me when we're so different, and when we don't even share the same worldview? I remember when I kissed her for the first time in a bar near Victoria Station. She was working for a bank at the time, and I was a detective at Scotland Yard. After we'd been out together a few times, she'd invited me to go and dance at her landlord's apartment, but I never did. It's not really my style. And instead of getting annoyed, she said that she respected my decision. When I reread the statements made by her friends, I really feel proud because Athena doesn't seem to have respected anyone else's decisions. Months later, before she set off to Dubai, I told her that I loved her. She said that she felt the same way, but added that we must be prepared to spend long periods apart. Each of us would work in a different country, but true love could withstand such a separation. And that was the only time I dared to ask her, "Why do you love me?" She replied, "I don't know and I don't care." Now, as I put the finishing touches to these pages, I believe I may have found the answer in her last conversation with the journalist. Love simply is. February 25th, 2006. Revised version completed on Expedited's Day, 2006. I want to know the genesis. The novel sprang from both reality and fiction. In October 2005, I met a Romany stewardess in Transylvania that inspired the story of Athena. She told me how she had been adopted by an Austrian family and about her gypsy roots. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that this book is Both reality and fiction. I love that. Okay. We made it through. The Witch of Portobello. I only cried a few times, okay, guys? I feel a kindred spirit, I guess. But anyway, I will see you on the next book. Namaste. I love you guys.